All right, we're live. Ha ha. Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. Once again, we are live on episode number 3. Today on Shift the Journey, we have Blake Babin. That's right, it's Babin, not Babin. It's like cabin, but with a B. So that's what he told me. And so I try to tell people that with amogus. It's so easy. Rhymes with bogus. I got called bogus amogus, in high school. But then people mess it up and say am bogus. And it's like, that's not what I said. But anyway, so if it's your first time tuning in to Shift the Journey, this is just a passion of mine. I wanted to chase down this passion where I'm able to come on here and interview people to hear about their journey from one career field to another. Maybe you're out there thinking, man, I don't know. I don't know how to get to cybersecurity, or I don't know how to become a business intelligence analyst, or a BI developer, or a data analyst, or an attorney, whatever the case may be. I want to give you the opportunity to hear somebody's story so that you can have some encouragement in whatever journey you're on. All right. So I just want to do a quick intro about me. If you already don't know, once again, my name is Tito Amogus. I'm the host here, and I am a career shifter myself. I served 20 years in the U.S. Air Force. I retired in 2015, and then I went into data. And from there, well, I'm still in there. So I've worked for a handful of different companies in like different industries, and now in consulting. And let me tell you, it's been a journey. But today is not about me. Today we want to hear about Blake, who he had some like noise issues going on in his house. So he's actually sitting in his vehicle over in what was the Best Buy parking lot?
That's right. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I mean, I hear you. I hear you loud and clear, and you may be a little bit in the shadows, but it's okay. Let me just ask you a couple questions. So first off, I know we talked the other day about like your journey and like where you started. Let's let everybody know where are you from originally and where did you go to school?
Yeah. So originally, born and raised on the West Bank in New Orleans. Um, it's really Harvey, but not many people know much about Harvey, so I just say the West Bank. I went to school over there until last 2 years of high school, and then my mom and I moved here to the Gulf Coast. Finished out here, and I really thought I wanted to be an engineer. So I wanted in-state tuition, so I went to Mississippi State because that was the best engineering school I knew of in state. And I found out real quick I didn't want to be an engineer. Um, and so I switched from mechanical engineering to um, nutrition to economics. Thought I wanted to be a day trader. And then I kind of got a little shake up and, really started thinking like, I don't want to sit inside all day. I mean, I was young, I was in college. And so I was looking at majors I didn't know anything about, and Mississippi State had landscape contracting. And so before I ever took my first plant or soils class, I did an internship and I loved it. It was stuff I knew nothing about, but I liked the work. It was exciting. So I did that. I got my bachelor's in science, landscape management and contracting, a minor in business. And that's what I did for about 8 years in various roles, from working in the field every day to then being in the office, being an estimator, and then a department head, a project manager. Um, I pretty much did it all. So I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but to
And
answer the
so what
question,
was yeah. So what was your like day to day like, or like day in the life? How about a day in the life,
yeah.
like your first day?
So first day uh, in landscaping.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, Yeah, I was actually working on campus. So my first landscape job was on Mississippi State's campus landscape crew,
Mhm.
and I was planting flowers.
Oh, wow.
So I did all day. I knew nothing about flowers. I knew nothing about planting them. But it was just me and another guy, and it was hot, and there was nobody around because it was the summer at university. So really nobody's there, and that's what I
Right.
did. And pretty much every day was different. I really didn't do the same thing. It wasn't until much, much later I started getting into like repetitive work, maintenance work, and then that's when I figured out I didn't want to do maintenance work. I wanted to do construction work because that was where there was like technical things like irrigation and lighting, and there was design aspects to it, and so there was just
Oh, yeah, yeah.
there's a lot of variables and moving parts, and I think that's what I enjoyed about it so much.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and at the end of the day, you could turn around and look at what you did. It
yeah.
was instant gratification.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's definitely something, some people, they thrive off, like, routine. Other people thrive off, seeing, like, "Oh, this is what, the day's work did. This is what,"
Mhm.
um, but yeah. So what made you start thinking outside of landscaping?
Yeah, so um, it really started about the time I got out of the field and into the office as an estimator, sitting behind a desk every day. Um, and I was really doing it was repetitive work, but I was basically doing a lot of CAD work. Um, I was uh, doing area takeoffs and counts and all this stuff with a computer on these massive landscape projects. And it was great to be associated with the company because I got exposed to a scale I would have never done, at the university or at some of the smaller companies. And it
Mhm.
really kind of polished me for some of the later roles I did. But um, it was about then I started thinking like I started noticing that I really liked the intricate, and there was probably other professions out there that rewarded um, being good and being interested in intricate things. And so it was about that time I started thinking about like going back to school, and I thought about being an accountant. I thought about going back to school for engineering, and my
So
wife was, go ahead.
yeah, so, with your major, did you finish that? Did you
Yeah,
finish that degree?
I graduated in 2011.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah, with a bachelor's of science in landscape management and contracting with a minor in business.
Oh, maybe you said that already. Yeah, no, that's crazy. Yeah, I'm like, before we had the conversation, last week or the week before, whatever it was, I was like, "Man, I've never heard of that." Is I mean, is that like, I'm sure that, like, with you being in it, you've heard of other schools that offer something like that, but,
Yeah. Well, I'll give you one better. So there's
yeah.
actually, and I'll explain it as something else. There's like the student or university equivalent of a landscape Olympics. So
What?
yeah, when I was there, it was called Planet, Professional Land Care Network. It goes by a different name now, but these different universities that had landscape construction and landscape architecture programs competed each year at a certain location. It was different every year, and all these different like competitions. So it was stuff like insect identification or plant identification, or it was like estimating, or it was like actually things in the field. So like truck and trailer or woodworking. I was on the irrigation team. Me and another guy came in second our first year out of all these other schools.
Wait a minute.
So
So on the irrigation team, what exactly did you have to do for that?
yeah, so it was like a standardized. They gave us all the parts we needed plus more.
Mm,
Each school, and then you had a certain amount of time, and you had like a plan. You didn't have to trench it, like you didn't have to dig and trench, but you did
oh, okay.
everything above ground. Um, and so, like, we need this many heads this far spaced with these nozzles in them, or they would tell you, like, you need to match precipitation on the nozzles, and you had to know what that meant and
Oh my
what to do with that.
gosh.
You had to wire a controller. Like, it was intense.
This is a whole world that I've never even heard of.
Yeah.
That's so
So,
crazy.
my senior
Maybe
year, I was the student body president of that whole thing for Mississippi State.
wow.
So,
Wow. That's nuts, man.
Yeah.
That's wild. I can't even,
I
I
never knew
mean,
it existed
wow.
before, and I've never seen anything like it since, of any other, like, I can't think of any, like, educator Olympics or anything like that, so
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, you hear about like math club and chess club and all these people.
Mhm.
They're like traveling and going, competing against each other and all these things. Of course, sports, but what? I've
Yeah, we went
never
to
heard of that.
right outside of Atlanta. My first year I did it, and then my last year, was right outside of Chicago.
Wow.
Yeah, so they go
Wow.
all over.
Like how many schools were participating in this type of thing?
I'm not really sure. There was schools that would go and compete only in, like, a handful of competitions,
Okay.
and then there were schools that sent teams to everything. Um, but, I mean, there was Purdue, there was West Virginia, there was Auburn, there was, some smaller schools I wasn't really familiar with, or some technical
Yeah.
colleges, Virginia Tech. Um, there wasn't really much from out west, but maybe I'm just not remembering very well.
Wow. So was there
But that
like
was
this school that's like, oh, that's the standard. We have to beat them.
Yeah, I mean, it was kinda like competition, it's kinda like certain countries are known for their runners and certain
Yeah.
countries are known for, like, their soccer or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, it wasn't Mississippi State, I can say, always did really well in the field competitions.
Wow.
And there were other schools that really did well in, like, their architecture or landscape architecture design competitions and things like that, but, we were very competitive and we came, very close each year.
Wow. Man, that's thank you for educating me. Thank you
Yeah.
for educating us on
Well,
that because I
a
never
lot
would
of
have known.
that's how a lot of guys and girls, got to get basically, wine and dine by some of these larger landscape companies across country is they would come, like, scouting, and then they would take you out to dinner in the evenings and, like, kinda get to know you, and that's how you would get invitations to go, maybe internship with them or maybe, like,
Yeah.
I did,
Wow.
a week over Christmas break in Virginia while I was still in college because there was a company that was, pursuing me, and I ended up working for them right after college. My wife and I got married, and then we moved to Manassas, Virginia for a little while.
Hmm.
Did
Wow.
the work. It didn't work out with Manassas, Virginia for us. It was not the type of life we were pushing for. It's too big city for us. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So fast forward it. I've totally derailed that conversation
yeah,
there,
yeah, that's
but
my
it's
fault
just
too.
like it's so interesting. I'm like, are you kidding me? I've never heard of that. So fast forward to like where you started to look outside of your field.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So estimating, started looking, and my wife was like, "Why don't you look at something with computers?" And honestly, like I had never thought of a career with anything computers or technology. Um, I wish I'd have known about computer science or cybersecurity when I was in college. But I was like, you're right. And she said, you're always been kind of nerdy and like you like computers and you're good with them. And I started thinking back to like any class I had that dealt with computers. I typically did better than not. Anything in my previous jobs that was computer based, like I enjoyed more, I did better. I was a quick learner. And
Mhm.
so, like, first thing you do when you think of a computer job, you go to NSA.gov and see what open positions they have. And like, that's how just, like completely disconnected I was. And I started looking at jobs with different government agencies, not even thinking about like, Google or Apple or even
Right.
security.
Yeah.
Um, and everything was like, they wanted a degree and I want to touch on this later, but it was daunting. It was, we need 5 to 10 years experience. We need these certifications and you need to have a master's, in criminal justice or, something that I didn't have anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I started looking and I wanted something online. And I found through Dakota State University, it was one of a handful of schools at the time that had an online DoD accredited cyber operation program.
Oh,
So
that's
I was like,
interesting.
I looked at the curriculum and it was programming and networking. And again, like same pattern, all these things I knew nothing about, but it seemed super interesting. So I was like,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm doing that. So I
So,
started, go
real
ahead.
quick, is that program still up and running?
Yes. Yeah. Dakota
So,
State
like,
University still has full online and it's in person too. So that's the cool
oh, that's
part is like
interesting.
you're getting the same curriculum the in-person students are getting, which this was before COVID. Like
Yeah,
before COVID, this was unheard of.
yeah.
Um,
So, like,
so
after the reason why I asked is, like,
mhm,
after today's episode, if you when you go to share this, share the link on LinkedIn, if you could put in your comments, like, the program that you took,
yeah,
and you say, "Hey, yeah, this is the thing that I took,"
yeah,
and, just the blurb about it, because I think that's pretty interesting. I think that would be super helpful for somebody who's trying to get into your field.
absolutely. Um, and I will say, knowing what I know now, depending on what your goals are, going out and getting another degree is not the answer. I fully recommend education, but depending on what your goals are and where you're at and what you want to do, um, there might be other ways to get there because I'll enlighten on that in a minute because I did not finish that program. I did
Oh,
not get a
yeah.
second degree, um, and I was able to do what I did without a computer science or cybersecurity degree or master's or anything like that. So, but it was a great program, and I learned a lot.
Mhm.
And then there was a hiccup. I got offered for a company I previously worked for to move and be a department head with the potential to possibly move on to a branch manager, or they were growing very fast and they had grown a lot since I had left them. We left on good terms, and so I thought like I can't pass this up. I have to do this,
Mhm.
and that was really what convinced me that I wanted to change careers after doing that for 2 years. Um, so I put the DSU program on hold, um, and I tried that, and that's what convinced me like I want to change careers, and I know exactly what I want to change it to, and that was cybersecurity.
Mhm.
And so I picked that program back up,
Yeah.
and I actually got my first job while I was still in that program. Um,
Okay.
so I got my I applied. I took like a strategy to it because I had done some like sales work and project management work, and estimating too. You kind of have to sell your company when you're trying to get numbers from a vendor. But
Mhm.
um, I made a every job I saw that I halfway qualified for. I didn't care about the experience. I didn't care about the degree. In my eyes, I was on the path to get that, so that was just as good. I wasn't applying to be a lawyer, so it's not like I needed to pass the bar exam. And
Right.
so I applied to everything I halfway qualified for, or knew what they were talking about, or what I thought was interesting or could get me to where I wanted to be. And where I wanted to be was I wanted to be an incident response analyst in a security operations center. That
What
was
is
like
that?
say
What
it
is
again.
that, though? What is
Okay.
that?
So an incident response analyst, um, at the time when I knew what it was, I know much more about it now, but at the time that was like uh, oh, there's an alert on the computer. You work for maybe the government or for a private company, and something's going on with their infrastructure. Oh no, somebody's trying to get in, investigate that, see what's
Mm.
happening, stop them. So that's like the defense. The blue team is what it's called, but that's the
Okay.
defense. Um, and at the time, that's what I wanted to do. So I put all my efforts in going after those jobs, or anything that could get me close to that job. And um, I put it all in a spreadsheet of what company it was, how I sent it. I remade my resume for every
Yeah.
job I applied for.
Yeah.
I put the date, and then I gave it a month. And then I started hitting all those companies again, trying to get in touch with anyone who would talk with me, looking to get feedback on what they thought of my resume and how
Man,
I
that's
stacked
like
up to their.
aggressive networking.
Yes, it was social engineering to its fullest, but I kind of wanted to put on display like this is my attitude and this is what
Yeah.
I'm willing to do. And, I didn't want like, hey, will you hire me? It was a, hey, what do you think of my resume? Because, they probably didn't look at it. And if they did, they probably didn't remember, but it would make them pull it again and get it in
Yeah.
front of them to at least tell me.
Yeah.
Now, like, I had a pretty low success rate on getting anyone on the phone. And anyone I did get on the phone, I had a low success rate of like talking to actually somebody who would be able to look at the resume.
Mm-hmm.
But I did get lucky a few times. And I got really lucky with one company. She pulled my resume up and she was like, it looks good. You don't have the experience. I see you're in this program. It's really kind of a pipeline position, but I might have something. And I was like, that's awesome. Like, that was the best news I had gotten about any of this.
Wow.
And like in the next week, I had my first interview with them. And it was a technical interview, and I was not ready for that at all.
Yeah.
And I was completely honest. Well, no, I mean, I don't think I bombed it. I think I remember the three questions, and one of them I didn't even know what they were asking. And I said, I'm going to be honest with you, I would have to Google that. And they took that as like, I'm not trying to make things up. And, I'm willing to go find the answer myself. And that was just, I really feel like it was right place, right time.
Yeah.
And we set up another interview, met in person. Within like 2 weeks, I had an offer letter. And
wow.
I couldn't believe what was happening. This was like right when people were starting to hear the word COVID.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this March will be 4 years since that happened. So it was like about this time 4 years ago that the interview process and stuff was going on.
Wow.
No, it was January. Sorry, because it took some, working for the government. There's like background checks and clearances and all that stuff. So it took a little time, but so I continued that program through the first year of me working in that position. So I did have a degree. That was the requirement. I had to have a IT related certification, which by that time when I started, I had accomplished. I got CompTIA A+ for anyone who knows what that is. That's like it's more like a help desk certification. So it's more like, my printer's not working, or like, you sure everything's plugged in, and like recognizing the plugs, and it gets into more than that. It's a mile wide and an inch deep, all about like IT stuff. And it was not easy. It was actually 2 exams. But the program I was in, actually, there was a course that prepped me for the certification. So I was thankful for that. And it was when I started, about a year in, I was looking at other certifications, and I had a conversation with a few people because I started recognizing as a government contractor, at least in the people I've been around and the contracts I've been on, there is more progress to be made with certifications than there is with another degree. Like, if you have a bachelor's already, then you're probably meeting the requirement. If you wanted to get into like federal positions, it is very good to have a master's or a PhD. But certifications get you more.
Yeah, I feel like it's that way in data as well. Like, I have a master's in data analytics, but the most movement I ever got with like moving from one company to another and like stepping up had to do with a couple of things. One was an advanced certification, and the other thing was networking. And and people ask me all the time, it's like, oh, should I go back to school? It depends. It depends.
Yeah.
Depends what you're trying to do. Depends where you're trying to go. It's like, what does your network look like? Do you know people who are hiring or maybe hiring or are in the field that could give you some insider tips or something, like what they did to get their job, whatever it is. But yeah, sometimes, yeah, education definitely, get your degree. but other times it's really about like who you know
Hmm.
to get that initial interview. And like now, especially now, I see people, getting laid off all the time, and there's like my LinkedIn page is flooded with people who are like, oh yeah, trying to find a new job. And the things that people have told me who are like job searching is like, man, one of the things is that you can't even get an interview unless you know somebody at the company.
Yep.
And that may not be the case every single time, but for the people who are looking for jobs now, it certainly feels that way. That's certainly how it feels to them. So
Yeah. And I mean, as I feel like I've been in it long enough that I can spot at least people who will enjoy doing what they do in the few positions I've been in cyber. And I can say that folks who, when we get on an interview, or I can tell by their resume that they have projects they work on, on off hours, or they're, developing something on the side. Um, they're just, they love cyber, they love certain aspects of security, and it doesn't need to be their job for them to, follow their passion, and they're
mhm,
not so pinned up on, I have 16 certifications, or I have 7 different degrees. um, those are the people that I would move mountains to try and hire.
mhm,
The folks that have great attitudes and a passion for what we're about to ask them to do.
yeah,
um, those are and I've seen it, like, those are the folks that typically rise faster than anyone else. They have
mhm,
great attitudes at work, and people want to work with them and for them.
yeah, yeah, man. It's so interesting. Like looking back, like just take like big picture of your journey. That's insane, man. That's really crazy. Like I tell people all the time, I say, "Yeah, man, I did all kinds of things." They're like, "Oh, you were in the Air Force?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "How many years or how long were you in the Air Force?" I said, "20 years." And they said, "What did you do?" And I always hesitate because I'm like, dude, I did a lot of things. I
Hmm.
mean, I don't even know where to start, with working on nuclear missiles, working on airplanes, working in an office, working on airplanes again, and working in an office. And but I don't know, man. I don't think that like doing electronics is so far removed from like working in analytics, which is what I do now. And because there's a lot of like the analytical stuff, the logic and troubleshooting, I face a lot of the same stuff now. But like looking at yours, you're like planting flowers and you're competing with the best of the best in irrigation systems, and then you're working for the government as in like cybersecurity. And yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's
I was looking at the display. It's getting darker out there and it looks like
yeah.
I'm having an interview with the Joker, but but yeah, no, that's super interesting. So what can you tell me some of the things that you really like about what you do right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's transferable skills, really, that I identified in my previous career, and like that's really how I got to where I am. Is I just rode on the backs of the skills I acquired or found I had. um,
Hmm.
Whether it was, I had never designed irrigation systems for like apartment complexes, like very large amusement parks and things like that. I'd never been exposed to that scale, but I learned very quickly, and I was taught by someone that was really good at it. And like just seeing, okay, I enjoy this technical thing, and it's because of these principles, or how you work through the problem. You're given a property that's different every time, but you work it the same way. And you eat the elephant or you peel back the onion. There's so many cliche sayings,
Right.
and it's the same way with say incident response. So
Yeah.
there's different alerts that are going to happen in a enterprise whether it's people doing things they're not supposed to be doing, or things are not operating correctly. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's different every time, but at the same way, you work through the workflow the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, that's one thing I identified. Uh, I liked cybersecurity better, um, because it was a little bit more intense. You
Yeah.
know, there's uh, there's certain teams that work 24/7, 365,
Mm-hmm.
and that's because they're protecting things that are worth protecting,
Mm-hmm.
like that. And so, when an alert hits at 6 p.m. when everyone's ready to change shift, and it's kind of like going through the suck together. Like, you build this camaraderie, and it was the same way with landscaping. When it was raining, or it
Yeah.
was really hot outside. So it's that team. It's building the camaraderie. Um, but there's also like an intensity sometimes of, you're working hard for landscaping because you want to do a good job, and you're getting paid well to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But for cybersecurity, you're actually protecting things. And
Yeah.
if you work for a private company, say you work for a healthcare company, you're protecting people's health records.
Yeah.
um, if you work for the government, you could be protecting things far greater value. um, no
Yeah.
no disrespect to people's health records, but um,
Right. No, I get
so,
it. Yeah.
and it's so broad. Just like landscaping, there was irrigation, and there was so many different fields inside that you could specialize in. And cybersecurity is that plus 1,000,
Yeah.
because you can really be in the incident response so much that you really want to um, deconstruct malware, or you really get good
Ooh.
at like network uh, investigations.
Hmm.
So there's so many things you can specialize in, and it is always changing. So that was the
Mhm.
one thing I kind of got stagnant with landscaping, is like, plants are kind of all the same. Like, you
There's
put the
somebody
green.
somebody out there is gonna be offended. You need to watch
Yeah,
what you're
that's
saying.
okay. They can find me. But like, you put the green side up. Like, there's
Yeah.
never, eh, you know, 2 years ago, AI wasn't being talked about with completely allowing anybody to build malware. And
Yeah.
now, like, we could do it in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Um, and that nobody was prepared for that. Nobody is prepared for that. And
Yeah.
it's always evolving.
Yeah.
Um, so it's always going to be around. It's never going to go away.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
it's important. It's, you
Is
know,
so is your field like undermanned? Are you guys um like is there a huge demand for people who are working in your field?
yeah. So
Yeah.
there is a there's a huge demand for my field. Anybody I've spoken with,
Yeah.
whether it's vendors, people in their own sales team that can speak knowledgeably about the product or what the product's doing, to where I work. Um, we always have positions becoming available, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of opportunity out there, and
Yeah.
people who excel typically get poached, or
Mhm.
they have opportunities to then move on and do that next thing that they discovered they have a passion for, and
Yeah.
they've specialized themselves in. And
Speaking of passion, let's segue into like your passions. So I mean, I feel like we could have a conversation for like a couple hours, but
yes.
I think trying to stay true to like where we're going with this episode. So we talked about your journey, and then you talked about some of the you. I was going to ask you like, what are some of the unique things that you're, like interesting things that you're you're involved in, and I think you gave a lot of that information, and I think a lot of the information you gave also is super helpful because I have talked to people who were thinking about cybersecurity, like coming out of the military. There was a big push. I remember when I was retiring, there was a big push. It was like, oh yeah, we're looking for people to do cybersecurity, and maybe some people are just like, yeah, I don't really know enough about it, or all the things, whatever. But if that's a field that's like constantly, you know, looking for people, looking for people to hire, I think in this economy and with the jobs climate, how people are getting laid off and all that stuff. I think it's really important that they know that stuff, that there's a field out there that's available, and do some digging. If you like it, connect with this guy. Babin rhymes with cabin, and and he doesn't normally sit in the dark like this when he's
No,
talking
no,
to
no.
people. But okay, so like last question, really. Tell me something that you are just passionate about.
And is this professionally related,
Oh,
or do I
whatever.
need to make it not?
Yeah, whatever. Just beware. My mom watches this, so just
No,
watch
no, no.
watch what you're talking
So
about.
I'll drop two. So I'll drop one that I'm told I need to kind of disconnect from work a little bit because I can obsess over it, and like when that laptop closes, I still think about it.
Yeah.
I Since getting into cyber and understanding some of the other things, um, red team operations is something that I have wanted to get into for some time, and I've taken
Wait, what is
so,
that?
and I'll explain that in a second.
Yeah.
But that's something that I've identified as like that's the next frontier for me that I will push to get there, some form or fashion, whatever that looks like. Red teaming. So I mentioned earlier, my first job was an incident response analyst, and that's like the defense. That's considered blue team. Red
Right.
team is the other side. Now, I don't mean being
Oh,
like a government hacker. That is,
okay.
the H word is thrown around a lot. Um, and it doesn't have to be that, but there are what's called penetration testers.
Yeah.
Say, your company probably, if you're a developer, might run your own security vulnerability testing or penetration tests on any
Mhm.
applications you're developing or your company itself. And so it's basically like an auditor. If anybody's familiar with accounting, it's like an auditor,
Mhm.
but a lot more technical. Um,
Yeah.
so that's something that I want to get into. I've started a company to set the groundwork for that. I'm not the first to do that, but I started the company because I didn't want that to be the thing that keeps me from doing it if I can't do
Mm.
it with the government. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm working on certifications just so I can put that by my name, because just saying like, oh yeah, I can do a pen test, like, you know, nobody's just going to hire you off the street if you say, yeah, I can do that. You kind
Right.
of have to have like a customer portfolio and things like that. So
Oh, yeah.
that's the work connected passion. The other thing is running. Um, I have when I got into this career field, I was not a runner. Um,
Yeah.
I did work out a lot. That's kind of how I got to know you, is through a friend of a friend. And I hated running and I wasn't good at it. And then through this job, I met a guy. He was from the Air Force, and he was a runner. And I just got to like picking his brain about running. Like, why would you like doing that? And and then he invited me, and I was like, no, I'm not doing that. And it just kind of rolled into like, all right, I'll try. Like I've run some in workouts, and I'll do it,
Yeah.
try to do it longer. And I was awful at it.
Yeah.
And I think it was very simple. So it's not like it was complicated like any of the other things I've uh, gone towards. But
Mhm.
it was very simple, and I was bad at it, and I wanted to get better. And
Yeah.
as I got to running longer distances and doing more, like, it was relaxing, but yet it gave me
Mm.
something to push for. And so yeah, now I would consider myself a runner. Um,
Oh. Like, how are you like running marathons, halves,
Not full
fives,
halves.
tens,
I just
half?
did a half 2 weekends ago,
Oh,
up North Mississippi. That was, and then I did the half marathon here on the Gulf Coast in
wow.
December. That was the second time I did that one. So I've already circled the calendar for a few more coming up.
Uh-huh.
And also it's like destination event. Like, we'll go here for me to run my race, but at the same time, the family, it's like a vacation a little bit too. We'll go to Memphis or
Yeah.
Houston.
Yeah.
Um, so I've met a lot of great people doing that. And now it's become like, if I don't run, like if there's a week I don't run, like I start getting real agitated and not
Oh,
really fun to
yeah.
be around. And That's
Yeah.
the outlet now.
What's funny is like I miss running. I miss running because like okay, so I was never a runner like you are. The furthest I ever ran in a race was 5K, and the
Mhm.
furthest I ever ran on my own without anybody ever saying, "Hey, you need to go this far," was 5 miles. I worked up from like 5K to 5 miles because I wanted to do it. I was like, I want to see what
Mhm.
that's like. And oh, this might be a little TMI, but the first time like I did it, like I ran up to that, and then it became like it was the coldest day of the year. I was stationed at Keesler, right? We were living here
Uh-huh.
in Long Beach, and it was the coldest day of the year. And I'm like, I can't just wear like a t-shirt while I run. And so I decided I was gonna wear like long johns, just the top though, right?
Oh no. I
It
see where
oh
we're going.
oh yeah. And I ran from I was trying to think. Yeah, it was like over I lived near the Long Beach past Christian line and
Mhm.
running down the beach, and I ran to the stoplight at Southern Miss at the Gulf Park campus,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
turned around there. And it was right around the turnaround that I started to feel, man, I got a little pain. Uh, got a little chafing. It was
Mhm.
awful. Took a shower
Yeah.
after that, and I wanted to cry. I wanted to die actually. And then people were like, "Hey, so you worked up to 5 miles?" I was like, "Yeah." They're like, "How was it?" I was like, "I mean, it was good except for that. That was the worst thing." But
Yeah.
I remember what I remember finishing my runs, even just 5K, was like, oh man, because I burn out that last mile, run a pretty fast first mile, kind of chill in the second mile, and then run as hard as I could to the car because the sun was coming up.
Right.
And, Southern Mississippi in the heat of the summer, you don't want to be out there when the death ray comes up, in the
Mhm.
sky. So I'm like running as fast as I can to get back to my car. And just the feeling afterwards, like, feeling of accomplishment, feeling of like, I just worked my butt off. I'm getting healthier, all these different things. But I had some leg injuries and I'm no longer able to run. And it makes me sad. But soon, when my old knee injury heals up, I'm going to get back on my bicycle. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, man, that's crazy. So, what's your next race coming up or
I don't
next
know.
event?
Probably in April. There's a 10K in Bay St. Louis. I ran
Oh, yeah,
last
yeah, yeah.
year. I'll try to. Um,
You were in the bridge?
yeah, I've ran the bridge.
No, I mean for that race. Is that part
Oh
of
no,
it?
no, 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 no. It's just it's like from where the train depot is in Bay St. Louis.
Yeah. Mhm.
So it's like from there down Washington Street and then just like down the beach in the bay for
Oh,
a
okay, yeah.
while, and then you just turn around and run back. But it's a really good event. I've come to know the two owners of the company that put that event on, um,
Cool, more
and that's probably
networking.
like my favorite running T-shirt that I've gotten so far from an event. And my 7-month-old daughter loves staring at the picture of it too. So they they
Cute.
can't disappoint this next year for that
Yeah,
race T-shirt. So
that's great, man. Well, man, it was great talking to you tonight.
yeah,
Really, really, I think I'm encouraged. I hope somebody else gets some encouragement. But it was cool to hear your story and like hear what where you came from, things that you did that like like I said, that whole irrigation competition. This just blows my mind. And getting to where you are today. If there's one thing before we sign off, if there's one thing, one piece of advice that you can give to anybody who's thinking about maybe not even just going into your field, but just like shifting careers, going from one field to another. If there's any piece of advice, put you on the spot. What is it?
I'm gonna cheat and say two. Um,
Okay.
it is not impossible. It's gonna feel like it, but it's not.
Amen.
And second, do not be discouraged by what the job postings say are required for experience. Do not worry about that entry level position that wants 5 years of experience,
Yeah.
which is ridiculous. Apply. You
Yep.
know, they can tell you no just like anybody else, but there's a very small chance that if you like push, they can be the ones that hire you. So don't let that one line about talking about experience, don't worry about that. Just breeze right past that.
Nice. Nice. Definitely. I second that. Boom. All right. Cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream, but next week, guys, let me look at my schedule real quick. Just trying to remember who I have coming on next week for episode 4. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, Brandon Burns. All right. Former Navy CB, now a data analyst. We're going to be able to hear about his journey. So thanks, everybody, for joining us. And if you're watching the replay and you're not watching live, thanks for hanging out with us either way. I hope to see you next time.